right. Oh, no, not the comments. Hide. It is now time for Deathshead's story. Oh, the story I struggled with for months! Well, you feel free to start regaling us with the tale, like learning what you... I don't know if you said something in the notes and I missed it. I might need to look at that. Well, actually, you did have a note that I don't know that I wrote down. I do remember that, but if there's specific things that you're like, I really struggle with this part or something like that, then feel free to say so in the chat and stuff like that. Alrighty, room. Oh, kitty. Are you getting out of your box or are you just resituating? I think you're resituating. Alright. Need some actual water. I should have done the red cup, not the Halloween cup. See, this is how you can tell where my real loyalty lies. All right. Snowy Scales, Sallascia and Aefron by Deathshead. 1,911 words. The gentle wash of river swells rushed against the icy shore, the moonlight glittering upon the waves. Out of the inky blackness emerged the blue shimmering of fish scales, though the figure was half human in shape. Soaking black curls fell from the mermaid Sallascia's head as she emerged from the waters, reaching her hands into the pile of pale white on the shore. She frowned, scooping out a double handful of snow and examining it under the silvery light. So this is snow, she said quietly, poking at the pile with her nose. Careful, came the voice of Aefron. She glanced over her shoulder, a purple-scaled merman rising up on the shore beside her. He pushed the blonde locks from his eyes, grinning as their tail fins rubbed together. He drew a line in the snowball she had made, whispering, "It'll freeze your hands if you hold it too long." "I'm not a fool," she muttered, dumping it onto his head. "Besides, I'm not so weak to the cold like a human would be, else this river water would have turned us away." "Fair, fair," Aefron laughed, brushing the snow from his hair. "Anyway, now that you've seen snow, can we head back into deeper waters?" "Please," Sallascia moaned, grabbing more snow and tossing it at Aefron. "You promised to show me more of the human world, and your surface winters are an enigma to me." All right. But what? Want to pull yourself ashore and swim in snow?" "No, but maybe we can go skating?" Sallascia asked, her eyes shining in expectation. "How would we do that without feet?" "Well, you told me that people slide around on top of a frozen pond. So we find a frozen pond and then slide around on the underside." "That's not going to give you a good idea of what skating is like," Aefron replied. "Then what will?" "I don't know. We don't have feet," Aefron said, frowning. "This is why I wanted to turn into a human," Sallascia said glumly, fitfully splashing with her tail. "Okay, wait. Maybe I can show you something upriver," Aefron said quickly, biting his lip as he tried to think. "Go on." Aefron furrowed his brow. "You have no idea, do you?" Sallascia sighed. And then she reached over and took his hands, folding her fingers with his as she looked into his eyes. "How about this? Think back on what you did during the winter when you were human that was so special." "Well, sitting around a crackling fire, drinking hot chocolate, and enjoying winter cookies was a treat," Aefron said. "More?" Sallascia said, nodding. "Kissing under mistletoe. It's a plant that grows on tree branches. And," Aefron closed his eyes, a smile curling his lips, "putting ornaments on a Yuletide tree. Riding on a sleigh through the woods. I'm not sure how we'd accomplish that one, though." "We'll find a way," Sallascia said, giving him a tug. "Come on, let's get back in the river and start looking for these treats." "Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained," Aefron said, releasing her hands and pressing against the shore, pushing himself back into the river water. Only when he was immersed did he realize how cold he had grown. a shiver running from his nose to the tips of his tail fins as warmth flowed back into him. Wow, chilly. Got you too used to the tropics, it seems. Sallascia laughed, taking his hand as she flashed him a smile. Now, what's your idea? Well, we need chocolate, mistletoe, a fire, and somewhere to skate. I thought you said... Forget what I said. That was me being an idiot. Aefron combed his fingers through his hair. Do you know where we are? In a river? I meant where the river is. You're the one who knows the human world, Sallascia said. Okay, let's swim a little ways upstream and look for a signpost on the shore. Sallascia nodded, her eyes gleaming in the starlight. The two commenced their swim, moving against the current as Aefron kept one eye on the shore. The river curved gently towards the right, several fishing huts appearing on the rocky shores, with piers jutting into the watercourse. Past the third such hut, he saw what he had been counting on, a grin curling Aefron's lips. All right, I have a perfect place for us to go, but we'll have to swim up and over a waterfall before we can get everything. I can do that easily, Sallascia said brightly. Now tell me, what lies on the other side? It's a surprise, Aefron said knowingly, putting on a burst of speed and jumping up out of the water onto the pier. Here he borrowed a fishing pole, dropping back down with it held against his side. But it includes everything I like to celebrate this time of year. Sallascia giggled, doubling her speed as the two swam around the next bend and arrived at the base of a dam spanning the river. Here, Aefron led her to the spillway, the two taking several tries before they could build up the speed to break through the waterfall to the other side. Here, a small village appeared on the shores, bright windows overlooking the artificial lake. Aefron swam past these windows, looking over them carefully, until he came upon one with a pie cooling on the sill. He reached up with a pole, preparing to bring it down, and Sallascia put her hand on his and asked, What are you doing? Getting us a pie to eat. But that's stealing, she said, blinking. Well, okay, I guess I'll have to go to my backup plan, Aefron said, resuming his swim along the houses, looking even closer. Soon enough, he came to a pier where someone had left a mug and a scrap of something that looked like crust. He pointed it out, asking, Would it be stealing to take those? I suppose not, Sallascia replied. Aefron used his pole to bring down the mug and then the crust too, the two surfacing to find the dregs of nearly frozen hot chocolate inside. Undeterred, Aefron mixed in a touch of river water and offered it to her along with the crust, whispering, Eat and drink quickly, love, else the river will ruin them. Sallascia nodded, eating and drinking quickly. She choked, spitting back some of the water. What was that? Pie crust and hot chocolate, just what humans love on a cold winter's night. It wasn't hot, Sallascia murmured, frowning as she tossed the mug away. Sorry, I'll try something else, Aefron said, frowning as he looked over the little village for more. He slowly swam along the piers, feeling his heart sink when he reached the last one and found nothing more to delight her. Well, something further upriver. I'm sorry, Aefron, Sallascia sighed, offering him a weak smile. This has been interesting. I want more than interesting, Aefron said, taking her hand. Come, I have an idea. Oh, okay, let's go. Two swam away from the little village and back into the river at the end of the artificial lake. The current pressed against them, the water growing colder as ice jutted out from the shores. Aefron led them up the watercourse until they came to a second dam. Here they had to climb up the muddy face and crack through the ice on the other side. Sallascia gasped, putting her hand to her lips. For there before them was a castle, submerged in the bottom of the lake. She looked to Aefron, whispering, What is this? A reservoir that was built over the ruins of Castle de Belro. Aefron took her hand, smiling as he guided her around the edge of the lake, and then broke through the ice along the shore. Here, a little frozen creek emptied into the lake, and here Aefron pulled himself up along the ice until he was inside the forest. Shivering, feeling the cold for true, he gathered fallen branches and twigs, bringing them to the shore, where he fashioned them into the makings of a fire. And then he dove back into the lake, sighing in relief at the relative warmth of the near-frozen water. Sallascia eyed him, crossing her arms as she asked, "What are you up to?" "You'll see," Aefron said, swimming once more along the shore. As expected, he came to a small hunter's shelter, a snow-covered lean-to on the beach. A few coals were still burning, while the man himself slept, the frozen carcass of his kill butchered behind him. Perfect. Aefron cast the fishing line, catching a coal on the hook, which he transported to his own fire pit. He tried over and over again to spark a fire into life, his efforts made futile by his lack of lungs, though he did make the logs smoke. Sallascia popped up beside him, looking at the fire and him blowing air from his mouth. "Oh, you're trying to make a fire for us to sit beside." "Failing, more like," Aefron muttered, sliding back down through the ice. He hung there in the lake, tracing his fingers on the underside of the ice. "I'm so sorry, Sallascia. I suppose there are some elements of the human world that are all but impossible for us merfolk to partake in." "Is that the way of it?" Sallascia asked, frowning. "You tried once and then give up?" "I tried several times to get the fire burning." "Tried the same thing several times, you mean?" "I suppose," Aefron muttered, licking his tail fins fitfully. "Don't suppose." Sallascia took his hand and brought herself alongside him. "I'm sure next year we can make something happen. If I put my mind to it." "Well, will you?" "Yeah," Aefron said, turning to her as a smirk curled his lips. He slid one hand under her arm and another around her hips, Sallascia doing the same to him as he whispered, "I already have a few ideas how we could do it, too." "That's great." She brushed her tail fins against his, lifting her gentle hand to his cheek. "Though there is still one human thing we've yet to try." Aefron looked up at the ice above them, then down at Sallascia, nodding. With a swish of their tails, the two reoriented themselves, Aefron feeling a little dizzy as the lake bottom became the sky, while the icy surface became down. But everything is relative under the waves. He took her hands, trying several techniques, until at last he was able to approximate ice skating by holding her with one hand and using a piece of flat wood from the bottom of the lake to push himself laterally through the water. It was slow going and oddly unnatural, but the two moved across the lake like skaters underneath, their tail fins trailing on the ice, their bodies moving in the slow dance of merfolk as a castle loomed over them in the sky. The joy in Sallascia's eyes sent a shiver through Aefron as he at last fulfilled his promise to show her a winter wonderland. All that was left was when she produced a sprig of mistletoe hidden in her hair, letting it fall from her hands toward the castle above them. "Where did you get that?" Aefron asked. In reply, Sallascia kissed him, the two folding together upon the ice. Those moths and monsters cheer for this story if you loved it. Sorry I tripped in a couple places. I'm having this issue lately where I keep getting my nose all plugged up in the midst of these streams. And like at first it started because I was like getting over the actual sickness. And then it was taking a while for, the sickness to fully clear out of my system. But now I'm not at all sick anymore. I don't have anything more to get out, and it's still happening. And this never happened before I get sick, so I got sick. So I hope this is not a new trend. I don't like it. I tripped in a few places writing it, so fair enough. I heard you know where my allegiance lies, and immediately thought of I pledge allegiance to Halloween. Oh, amazing. Yay for the sharks and turtles and tentacles and wheeze and kitties. Alrighty, room. Well, let me give you a summary of kind of my overall thoughts and where this is going to go before I begin going into the details. Well, actually, before I do that, let's find Nessa's note and then read that. Um, no questions, it seems. Just a note. Hello? There we go. I worked on this originally for the Christmas event, only to shelve it a third finished. After hemming and hawing, I finished it off for Valentine's, a holiday that does happen in the winter, so it fits, right? Though it's a little rough around the edges. In this tale, Aefron is trying to show Sallascia the joys of wintertime, from the safety of the water to the best of his now limited abilities, with mixed results. It's very cute that you guys put little summaries of the stories, even though it's not something that I've required and stuff like that. I enjoy it. You can see some of the winter Christmas word list showing up at the start. Oh yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the word list. That's fair. But yeah, so oh, that's a cute little shark. Where'd you get that? Okay, but so my overall thoughts. So I freaking love this idea. I really love what you've got going on here of two mermaids. Like, I mean, this is kind of the summary of their stories in general, right? The summary that you'll probably put in the Universal Archive. A lot of their stories are about him showing her stuff about the human world and stuff like that, which I like. I certainly enjoy that. And so I think this is so cute to focus on winter and stuff like that. It's not something I've necessarily seen in other, mermaid stories that I've read, though granted, I wouldn't necessarily say I've read a lot. But I love the specificity of, that makes sense. A tropical mermaid would not have seen winter, and so it's so cute for him to be like, we would like to sit and drink hot chocolate by the fire, but it's very difficult for them to do that. And I quite like the element of he keeps trying and failing, that like things are going wrong and stuff like that, and so by the end they kind of just have to make do with what they can and stuff like that. That it's not perfect, but it is still fun. It is still a good moment between them. I do really like that as well. You can see the Christmas influence, but I actually was okay with it. It is there. And I could definitely see other readers might be and let's ask the chat. Was that a problem for you or not? Were you like, oh, this totally reads like a Christmas story, or were you like, oh yeah, February's in the winter? I actually was the latter. I was like, that's kind of cute, focusing on the winter aspects of February. I kind of like that. I really like what you have going on here. This is such a cute idea, and there's so many cute things about this story. But within, I might have quite a few critiques. Well, I know I will have quite a few critiques for this story. Because within the execution of it, it does feel like there's some disjointedness to it. And it's interesting because I've been struggling to figure out how to describe it. There are some things that I can specifically say this isn't quite working for me. But the overall disjointedness, I don't really know why that's occurring. So some of my comments might be it might be this. I don't know. But if people in the chat have their own thoughts and feelings and theories, feel free to share any and all of that. Okie dokie. So the beginning is a really neat image. I will say that, so I don't know that I'm going to talk about many of his comments. This was one I read to my dad. And I can't say from him that the mermaid was necessary, because he actually was getting very, portally, inky blackness, blue shimmering, magical images, and so he had to kind of, rejigger his brain a little bit and go, wait, okay, half human in shape, magical, mermaid, So yeah, I like the description myself. I didn't really have an issue with it, but I know there was a comment to take this out, and knowing his reaction, I would say you did good by keeping it in and making it clear. It's also interesting because you do say icy waters, like you do say icy shore, but even with that, when you said pale white on the shore, I immediately thought white sand. Maybe it's the pale, actually, come to think of it. I wonder if you had just said sparkling white or just like the white powder. White powder would work perfectly. Yeah, some because I guess pale is like, oh yeah, there's a paleness to the whiteness, and that's how I view like white sand beaches. But I really like her scooping up the snow and the silvery light and her poking at it with her nose is so cute. I really like all the like actions she does here at the beginning, her dumping it on his head and stuff like that. All so adorable. Great little intro to what's going on there. Also, I didn't know that Sallascia has black hair and Aefron has blonde hair. I was very much imagining Sallascia with blonde hair and Aefron with brown hair. A good clarification about the water and stuff like that, I probably would have been going like, you know, what? Like, how are they swimming in these icy waters? Like, how are they okay? And so I do think you do a good job of right away going, hey, FYI, they're fine. They're fine in the water. I just saw Coolish. I think of something else when I hear white powder, but it's usually not on the ground. Oh my gosh. Sallascia found white powder and she booped it with her nose. Like, wait, Sallascia, don't! This is not a human thing you should engage with. I do like him being like, okay, can we go back? And she's, oh gosh, the gift. But I do like her kind of like tossing snow at him. I kind of wish she tossed an actual snowball, but that's still really cute. And she's like, we came all this way so I could learn about the human world, and now you want to go back? Yeah, I totally get the frustration. I love the word enigma there. That's not a word I hear enough. Also, why not? Why not swim in snow? Because I kind of feel like, unless there's like a reason, like, okay, that would actually freeze them, and granted they do get a lot colder on the shore, and also there's other stuff at the end I'll talk about that kind of makes sense as to why they would physically not be able to do that. But like swimming in snow would actually give her like a good, kind of be like sledding, you know, that actually would be more of a like, more of an approximation of human things in the winter than, you know, than potentially like skating on the underside and stuff like that. So I'm curious why that was a immediate no. I do think we'll talk about it more at the end, but I even from the beginning I did think this is a very cute image. This is super curious. I'm so curious about this line here. And I'm also especially curious why she couldn't, or why she hasn't. Because that brings up the possibility. I kind of was thinking that just wasn't a thing that could happen in this world, that like humans can get turned into mermaids, but not really the other way around. But this is sounding like that was a possibility. And I'm wondering why that possibility sounds like it's off the table now. They'll come to think of it. Now I'm thinking, is it just because she's in love with Aefron, and Aefron was a human, and she was gonna turn into a human with him, and then he got in a shipwreck, and he was gonna die, and so she had to turn him into a mermaid. And now, yes, she can turn into a human, but she couldn't be with Aefron if she did that, so she's not gonna. That's really cute. That's really sweet of her, if that's true. If that she's so in love with him that she would give up her dream of being a human in order to be with him. Oh, okay, that's very simple. Tessa said, at least here the snow is, or I intend it to be, implied to be far too shallow for her to swim in it. Gotcha. I guess it's interesting because the question was more like, do you want to do this? And her answer was no. So I guess saying like, it's too shallow for that would have cleared it up, but it's fine as is. It's not that big a deal. I was just curious. I really like them fitfully splashing with their tails. I always love when you use like non-human creatures, when you use non-human features to like show their emotions and stuff like that. Like I don't know that I'm the best at it, but I try when like Savion and Lister are wolves to like show their emotions through like their ears drooping or going back, or like, you know, what their tails are doing or whatever. And so I really like that when they're kind of like, you know, and then they'll be like, ugh, fitfully splashing their tails. That's super cute and great little like character creature world building. Oh ho! So there's a short and slightly longer version of where she meets and turns Aefron if you're curious about their circumstances. Well, do send that over. As I said, I may forget because I struggle when I'm streaming to remember these kinds of things. But I would love to read that. Yeah, 1,000 words. That works for me. Send me the longer version, or put it in the chat and tag me. I do think it's cute that like he's like, let's go upriver, let's do and she's like, yeah, you have no idea what to do, but then she kind of helps him and is like, hey, okay, let's take a second. What did you do in the winter? Let's think about this. That's very, very cute. We'll talk about this in at the end, but I'm gonna point this out that he defines what mistletoe is to her, like she doesn't know. We will remember that for later. I'm also curious why it was Yule time and not Yule tide. I'm not a Yule, celebrator, so I don't know much about the terminology with it. But it did sound slightly odd. This was time and not tide. Tide! Mermaids! Aha! I'm curious why the sleigh is the one he points out is like, how would we accomplish that? Because the sleigh feels like actually one of the most manageable things that they could do. Like, okay, sitting around a fire, like, that's gonna be pretty hard for them to, I mean, we see what happens at the end, but, you're not gonna get inside a house and sit on the couch and sit by the fire, and if you did, you'd probably be, like, either suffocating or, like, drying out, or bad things would happen. That doesn't sound very doable for them. Okay, drinking chocolate, like, I just realized that says chocolate, not hot chocolate. I might have read that wrong. That's so funny how weird that sounds to say drinking chocolate. Totally brings to mind the idea of just like melting candy bars and drinking it straight. But that is what hot chocolate is. It's a chocolate that you drink. Hey, Marks, thank you for the big cheer. Welcome. Anyways, so like, okay, like they might be able to drink hot chocolate, but how are they gonna acquire that? How are they gonna acquire the cookies? Okay, like, are they gonna be able to get somewhere? Like, they might be able to do the mistletoe, but can they get somewhere where they're under it? Okay, yeah, they can't really put ornaments on the tree, especially they can't, like, stand to get the top ones. So, like, yeah, I can understand how a lot of this is sounding not very doable. But riding on a sleigh, well, surely, like, people ride on sleighs close to the shore. Surely, you could find a way to, like, hoist yourself into the sleigh, and your tails would just be like a lady in a dress, sitting in the sleigh. So, and especially considering what happens later, like, we'll talk about that, but, like, if we can find a pie and hot chocolate on the windowsill, surely we can find a sleigh like, not only in manageable distance, but actually you could probably find it closer to the river. So it does sound strange that all of this, I'm understanding why he would comment on any of those things. Like, I don't know how we do that. But the Soleil is the most manageable thing. And so it seems a little odd that he's like, I don't know how we'd accomplish that one specifically. And, like, we'll talk about the suffocation thing later, because that's definitely a question, and that might be why he's saying that. But there's definitely a question that I had. Okay, so it is just kind of what happens later. He figures that he can start a fire and pilfer some food near the water. Grand Theft Sleigh. It's Grand Theft Auto, but you play as a mermaid trying to steal a sleigh. Alright. I guess I'll talk. I think I commented on it earlier, so I guess I should talk about it now while I remember it. So, where in the tropics were they? Or is this a fantasy? I guess this is a fantasy world, if it is Califrax's world. But I tend to think of the tropics as, like, you know, the Caribbean or something like that, or Hawaii, or, I don't know, it could be like, I guess it could be like South America or stuff like that. And all those things are not in reasonable distance to somewhere snowy. And so that would mean, I mean, granted, I don't know a whole lot about all those places. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But, you know, I'm imagining you have to go pretty far north to get somewhere snowy, like thousands of miles. And so when I first read it, I didn't have a problem with it. I was like, oh yeah, like they're in the tropics and other stories. Totally makes sense that he's used to that. But as I think about it, I'm like, did they travel thousands of miles so that she could see snow? And then he immediately wants to turn around. That does seem a little odd if that's the case. Now, granted, you do have, like, Florida that is, you could consider tropical, that maybe you don't have to go so far to get to the snow, so maybe it's a situation like that. But definitely a question that I had. If it's our modern world but there are mermaids, does that suddenly make it fantasy? I don't think it's our world. I think that, like I said, if it's Califrax's world, then as far as I know, his world, like, is not our world. It's a fantasy world. It's just, like, very close to how our world was like at the time, but it's a different world, so that, you know, you don't have to be historically accurate to everything, and you can play around with events and stuff. Yeah, it does. This says magical realism, probably, but yeah, this is not Earth. Florida! But if this was our world plus mermaids, I would call that urban fantasy myself, or yeah, like magical realism. Oh, that's in South Carolina accent. I thought it was like Australian accent. All right. Oh, okay. So yeah, we can talk about this here. So this goes to some of, like, the disjointedness I was talking about, and I think because this is kind of the main crux is the skating thing. I think this might be part of where that overall, like, why does this feel disjointed might come from. Because at first she's like, hey, can we skate? And he's like, no, we have no feet. And she has this idea of, like, okay, well, we could do it on the underside, though. And he's like, no, we have no feet. You know, he's very much against it. And then he gets these other ideas of what they could do about the mistletoe and the fire and stuff like that. And then he says, no, actually, we are going to skate. And she's like, wait, you said we have no feet. And he's like, forget what I said. That was me being an idiot. And, like, on the one sense, this is part of why I'm like, like, is this why it feels disjointed? Because it does, like, make sense. This is how people can genuinely interact, where, like, 1 second you're like, no, that's a terrible idea. And then the next second you're like, well, actually, though, unless, you know. But I do think there's a bit of an oddness to him immediately going, no. and then going, wait, yes. And then at the end, like, she kind of has to remind him and stuff like that. Oh, what was it? In my practice, I thought about this in so much more eloquent terms. I'll kind of talk about my conclusion, I guess, which is that I think that if he firmly was like, no to the skating, let's try other things. You know, that skating, that's not going to give you a good picture, not a good idea. But, hey, maybe we can find a pie, maybe we can make a fire, maybe we can do these other things. And then at the end, all those things fail. And then Sallascia is like, hey, I know that you didn't like the idea, but can we try my idea? Can we try skating? And then he's like, okay, we can try. And they actually have a really nice time. I actually think that would work a lot better for me than her going, let's skate, and him going, no, let's not, terrible idea. And then 3 seconds later going, actually, yes, great idea. And then at the end, you know, then still doing it, you know. I just had an idea. That's a terrible idea. The time skip. Let's do your idea. Oh, okay. Yeah, so if she had to convince him, or I don't know how to describe it, but I think that would be quite a good arc, at least to me, if he's like, no, and then all of his plans fall through, and then we return to it. I think that would work a little bit better for me. So I'm not sure what, okay, how do I talk about this? I think for me, it would have been helpful to state a little more clearly that he'd seen a sign. Because it just says he saw what he'd been counting on, a grin curling Aefron's lips. And yes, he did say, like, let's look for a signpost, so yes, you can note that it's a sign. And I think I just read the stories too fast my first time sometimes, and that could have been all. But I didn't quite connect that, like, he didn't know where they were. He found a sign. He knows where they are, you know. And so I do think saying, like, he found the sign that he'd been counting on or something like that. But the other part of this is that I'm assuming what he saw is, oh, we're in the de Belleroe section. There's a castle. And we'll talk about the castle in a second, but I feel it's like seeing this would make him go, oh, I know where to take her. To the castle! But, and this is, you know, one of my bigger critiques, that the castle feels like an afterthought. And again, we'll talk about it more when we get there. And so it does seem a little weird that he sees the signpost, he's like, all right, I know what to do. But what he knows what to do is more like, all right, they will definitely have pies. And instead of, ooh, I know where we are. This is the castle, damn. Because like he says, you know, okay, we have the perfect place. Again, that could be the castle. But then his answer to like, okay, like what's on the other side? It's a surprise, but it includes everything I like to celebrate this time of the year. Well, that's not the castle, you know, that's not, aha, like, I know what to do, I know where we are, there's an awesome castle, let's go there. Instead, it's, you know, it's a surprise, but it includes everything I like to celebrate. The castle was not on the list. And so it seems more like he saw the sign and he knew that there would be pie. And I'm not connecting that, you know? I do like him just like flopping onto the pier, grabbing somebody's fishing rod, and then flopping back into the water. That's great. Okay, so the pie, the pie situation. So multiple thoughts, many questions about the pie situation. Sign advertised a pie making contest. That's glorious. That would be awesome if that was the case. So I have multiple issues with the pie. So first of all, the pie being on the windowsill. Now I know that is kind of like, especially in like cartoons and stuff like that, you will have the characters, you know, kind of cooling the pie on the windowsill. So there being a pie on the windowsill is not necessarily an issue. But it's winter. And like, granted, I am not the pie baker in my family, so maybe I am misunderstanding things. But as I understand it, like, sure, you might want to put a pie on a windowsill to cool or something like that, or to bring the boys to the yard. But but I don't know why you do that in winter. A, because that pie will get cooled in 2 seconds, and you'll want to bring it back. And B, the house will get cooled in 5 seconds. You know, that will make the house really cold. And so, especially if we are not talking about, like, you know, a society that has electricity and heating like we do, if they're just relying on fires and stuff, then I don't know why they would be leaving their windows open for a decent amount of time to cool a pie, especially when it would do that job too well. The next question, or critique or whatever, about the pie. So I like knowing that Sallascia, like, doesn't want to steal. Like, I honestly would have thought she'd be fine with it, that she might have, like, a bit of a darker side and be like, I want to know about the human world and I don't care if I steal. So that is cute and an interesting character thing to know. Like, she is like, that's not okay, that's wrong. However, I feel like Aefron has a very good argument here, or could have a very good argument, why they should steal it. Because humans can make another pie. They can't get another pie. So yeah, if he said something like, you know, yeah, it is stealing, but they can just make another one, we can't, you know, then I feel like that's a very good argument. And not only that, like, the human would probably just think, like, I don't know, like a raccoon came by and ate the pie. Ate the pie, stole the tin, you know, or the birds pecked at it, or the tin fell into the river, or something like that. Or maybe it's not in a tin, I don't know. But I feel like there would be very valid, like, explanations that the human would come up with to be like, oh, darn. Dang coons got my pie, you know? and so Aefron could say that. They're just gonna think the animals got it. They're not even gonna know that we stole it, kind of thing. So, yeah, it is stealing. Yeah, stealing is wrong. As we learned last week about the 10 Commandments. I know stealing is wrong. But I feel like you could have a very convincing argument. Who the F steals a pie? I mean, but pie though. You know, maybe, I mean, on the one hand, I still stand by what I said about people would probably think the animals got it. But also, if you're leaving yummy pies on the windowsill, I guess the neighbors could be interested in that pie. But even then, the human would still think it's the neighbors. The humans would still be like, the neighbors stole the pie. They would not think, what if? I'm just thinking out loud here. What if a mermaid came by and took it? You know, like, I think the coons got to your brain, Jim. You know? But I hope that that's not actually, like, a bad word or anything. I'm just shortening raccoons. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. But while we're on this train of thought with the pie, here's the thing. I would be a lot more mad if somebody stole my mug than if somebody stole my pie. Because I can make another pie. I can buy or plea for somebody else to make the pie again. Like, sure, it's sad. I wanted my pie, but I will survive, and I will get, you know, basically the same exact pie again easily. That mug, I potentially will never get back. Especially in my case, like, so, like, my dad has a lot of mugs that he's gotten from, like, trips around the world. It's not easy to just go back to England to get that mug again. One of my mugs that I use a lot was a gift from my friend. So, like, maybe I could find that mug again, but it's not gonna have the same meaning anymore. And the mug I use more than anything is a Pandora Hearts like 15th anniversary thing, which I think either I would never find again, or it would be super expensive if I did, because it was limited edition. So like most mugs that I personally have, I would be very mad that somebody stole and tossed away so much more than if they took my pie. And granted, I know maybe I'm the odd one out. Sure, like mugs in general are not that hard to come by. Sure, maybe you can just go to the store and buy another mug. But even so, even if the mug is not limited edition or hard to get, even so, I can make another pie. I am now, however much money in the hole because I had to buy another mug. I guess I do have to pay for the pie ingredients again. But point is, regardless on if the mug is like rare or if it's just a mug, stealing a mug to me is a worse offense than stealing a pie. Let's see, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and so then the other thing regarding the pie is that, like, okay, like, I do have to suspend my disbelief a little bit to recognize, like, okay, like, I know the image of pie cooling on the windowsill. I don't feel like it really works in winter, but I can suspend my disbelief and believe that there was a pie there. I can do that. But weirdly, it actually is much harder for me to suspend my disbelief that not only is there a house with a pie on the windowsill, there's another house with crust and old hot chocolate on the windowsill nearby. I don't know why exactly that feels more unbelievable. I don't know if it's just a thing of like, you've already had me suspend my disbelief, so now that you're asking me to do it twice, now I'm like, now I can't do it, kind of thing. Or if it's like the nature of the crust and stuff. But that part definitely was a lot like, I raised my eyebrows, much more so than the pie. And so that goes back to, all of this is basically me arguing, just steal the pie. This is basically me arguing for stealing the pie. Not just like in universe, but because I feel like that flows better inside the story and to me as a reader. That if it's just like, yeah, like they can make another pie, we can't. And like he could even say, we'll just steal a slice, or we'll just take a bite. Now granted, if I came to my pie and there was a bite out of it, I would be very concerned. But if that is really funny. If my pie was cooling on the windowsill and then I came back and there was a bite out of it, I'd be like, I don't know what made that bite. I am now concerned about the integrity of my pie. But if, like, a slice was taken out of it, I'd be like, okay, well, I know a human did this, so I'm unhappy with my neighbors, but I know the pie is still edible. I know the pie has not been contaminated. The conversations we get into on this stream. Oh yeah, and the other thing about this situation is, like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief that the pole could get the pie crust. But mugs be heavy, though. And so, like, sure, you could, fish and get it wrapped around, like, the handle and then drag it along the snowy bank, but, then the hot chocolate is gone. So I'm curious how and granted, I don't know a lot about fishing, so maybe I'm way off base here. But I'm also wondering about how he was able to get this really heavy mug on his little fishing pole and bring it to him without spilling any of it. And then, unfortunately, this is being critique alley here. I'm also wondering why he puts river water in it. My guesses are, one, it's nearly frozen, and so putting the river is a little bit hotter than the frozen hot chocolate, and so putting it in there warms it up a little bit. Or, like, they need the river water, like Dracula and his dirt. They need their river water. They can't be drinking things that don't have the river water in it. But I definitely am kind of sitting there going, wait, what do you mean drink it quickly or the river water will ruin it? I feel like the minute that you put river water in it, that immediately will completely ruin the hot chocolate experience. But I don't know if I'm missing something there. And her reaction is very fair. I do like that she's like, it wasn't hot. Like, he said it's hot chocolate. It wasn't hot. This is not the experience I'm looking for. I do really like the, I'm sorry, this has been interesting. Like, she's trying to give a compliment, and he's like, no, I want more than interesting. Like, I'm into it now. I want to actually impress you now. I think that's very cool. Let's see where. What do I want to talk about? I guess I'll talk about the gasping. So you say, let's see if I. Here we go. He tried over and over again to spark a fire into life. His efforts made futile by his lack of lungs. So you're not just saying that, like, his lungs don't work very well, or because he's a mermaid, or they've not been in use for a while, or they're weaker than, his gills or something like that. You say it's a lack of lungs. 0 lungs. And so that, to me, means a lot. First, simplest question about that would be, how can Sallascia gasp if she doesn't have lungs? The next and bigger question would be, how can they spend any amount of time out of the water without lungs? Because, granted, like I said, I haven't read a whole lot of mermaid stories, but I think a lot of them will have both. Like, they have lungs, they have gills, so they can breathe outside the water, but also inside the water. But if they have no lungs, they only have gills. Wouldn't that mean that they would be like fish, outside of water, that like, I can't breathe, anytime they're outside of the water. So if that's the case, how are they talking, gasping, doing plenty of stuff outside of the water? Or am I misunderstanding what you meant by lack of lungs, or am I misunderstanding what not having lungs would be like? Okay, so now we are at the castle part. So castle underwater, amazing. Like, love that image, and we'll talk more about the image at the end. But beautiful image, stunning, 10 out of 10. But because it's that stunning 10 out of 10 amazing image, and more importantly, because at least in my experience, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of a fire. I was going to say a fire being submerged underwater. I also haven't heard of that. Well, I guess I've heard of lava. I guess I've heard of lava. But anyways, I have not heard of a castle being submerged underwater. And I love that. Like I said, beautiful image. But that's a big deal. Like, this is a huge thing. And there's an ad coming up. I'm going to snooze it for now. I'm on a roll. But like, that's a really big deal if there's a castle submerged under the water. And so especially if that's what he was recognizing with the signpost and stuff like that, that should be the goal. Like, that should be what we're getting to. It feels very strange to me that it's basically is like, wow, cool, moving on. That it's like, great. Other stuff is more important, though. It's like, no, like, this is so rare and strange, and he seemingly realized where they were and that this is that place. Like, why is this not the goal, or at least the grand finale? Um, so it feels weird that it's kind of treated as like, well, that's neat. Okay, moving on. You know? What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, like they're like, hey, yeah, that was a reservoir built over the castle. All right, time to make a fire. It's like, I'm not sure I care about the fire anymore. Like, let the castle. The castle is where it's at. You know? I think it could have worked if you had it like if it was something smaller, like a ship or even maybe just a building, or like I don't know, an old church or something like that submerged under the water. But it's a whole heckin' castle, you know. What was I gonna say? Another thing, and this is kind of an overall thing about the story, and I don't know if I should talk about this at the end, but I'll talk about it while I'm thinking about it. I think that's something that could have improved the story overall and maybe taken away those like disjointed vibes that I was talking about, is if you had all of this be planned. If you had, especially with that whole thing of like, is this hundreds or thousands of miles away from their home? Though granted, I don't know. I was gonna say, I don't know. Well, put a pin in that. But if Aefron had like, had planned this, he was like, okay, Sallascia wants to know human things. Let's think about, what do I do in the winter? Okay, we're at the fire. We do hot chocolate. We eat pie. And he thinks about it. He's like, wait. I remember like there's this place in this winter area with a castle under the water. Okay. I have my perfect date planned. And so he plans, he's like, okay, when I was there last time, they were cooling pies on the windowsill. I think we could get one of those. And I know there's like this shop that has like coffee and stuff that maybe we could get, hot chocolate on the windowsill of that. Maybe somebody's old hot chocolate. And, stuff like that. And then he plans that as the grand finale. That he's like, okay, we'll get the chocolate, I'll grab some mistletoe, and then at the very end, I'll show her the castle under the water. I think that would work super well. And it would even work with your idea here of everything's going wrong. It actually could work even better because maybe he went there in the summer, or maybe he did a reconnaissance mission in the summer and they were cooling pies on the windowsill and he's like, yeah, we'll get a winter's pie. It'll be great. And then they go there in the winter and he's like, oh, right. They're not cooling the pies on the windowsill. Oh no. And they go by the coffee shop and nobody has left their hot chocolate at the window. Or maybe they left like an espresso on the window and it's gross or something like that. That kind of thing. So it could be like he planned everything out, but all his plans are failing. And then, like I said, then the castle's the grand finale, and that one's still there. that one can't be moved and stuff like that. I think that could work very well. Again, also while kind of an overall thing, but also while I'm thinking about this, I do understand that there's probably, hello, Bitzer, welcome. There's probably a thing of, that, kind of a Vampire the Masquerade thing, Mermaid the Masquerade thing, where mermaids are probably not supposed to talk to people. They're probably not supposed to reveal themselves to people, either because of mermaid rules, or because they don't want to get killed, or put in a zoo. That's very understandable. So I can understand why, like, that's not presented as an option, and I can also understand why you probably didn't feel the need to, like, say, hello, this is not an option. The ad comes back so quickly. But there was a question in the back of my mind where I'm like, why can't you ask? Like, why can't you ask, some of the humans there, if you could have some of their hot chocolate or some of their pie or something like that. I don't know if they could like submerge their tails far enough, especially because the water is inky or something like that. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say, can they submerge their tails in the inky water and then and then be like, hi, can I have some pie? Though come to think of it, if I saw somebody in my river in the winter asking for pie, I would be very creeped out. So maybe it has nothing to do with them being mermaids and all to do with that would just be creepy to anyone, even if that was a human. But there was definitely a thought that was occurring to me that like wouldn't humans be kind enough to offer a slice of pie in these trying times? But on the other hand, I understand why they don't want to reveal themselves, and that should just be the default and stuff like that. It is ad time. My mince pies bring all the boys to the yard, the bardcore version of milkshake. Medieval raccoons. I mean, they had raccoons in medieval times, didn't they? Are raccoons only a New World creature?
Here is Kitty. She is cute. Sneeze, sneeze. You're adorable. Yes, you are. You are adorable. Yes, you are.
Oh yeah, I don't think I actually saw your thoughts on the whole studio thing, if you said anything. Now I'm covering the cat. It's not stealing, it's borrowing without permission. And never giving it back because it's now in my belly. Who is Gahurl? Who is this Gahurl, and why does she have sharks? Ah! To be frank, I always think of February as a miserable little month. Why? Because of winter, or because of other reasons? I mean, granted, I don't know. I was gonna say, maybe I agree, but I don't know. I don't feel like I think I'm more miserable in the spring. Unless, I lose power or something in the winter. The spring is when the storms are, when the rain is, and then I was gonna say, I was like, unless I lose power in the winter, but what's more likely to make me lose power? The storms in the spring! Though I guess it depends, because, I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it. Anyways, the point is, I guess I think of the spring months as being more miserable than February. Oh, Ghoulish answered earlier. Mainly because winter where I am is characterized heavily by rain, freezing, and no. Yes, my favorite weather. No.
Oh, kitty cat.
You've never seen Snow, Orphan? Oh yeah, because you said last time you're from India, right? Interesting. Oh yeah, okay. That's a good point. I'll bring that up again after once we come back, or once it's question time. Question and discussion time. Alrighty. Okie dokie. Oh yeah, the Christmas setup actually wouldn't be too bad for this particular story. I say in my comment, how? He's a little floppy fish in the forest? But yeah, my question there is, especially with the aforementioned lack of lungs, I feel like, he'd be acting quite fishy, flopping around. I don't know if I can find it, but let's see if I can, find the Gravity Falls mermaid scene. No, that's not coming up. But there's a scene in Gravity Falls where there's a mermaid character, and like once he's on land, he truly is like flopping around like a little fish. And granted, that's done for comedic purposes. But especially saying inside the forest makes me think inside the forest. And so I'm definitely wondering, especially with his lack of lungs, how he is able to successfully do that and not be like, help me, help, I flop. I do like him trying to make the fire, and stuff like that. I guess maybe if you didn't want to create the whole lack of lungs thing, you could have just said, like, he's just too wet. Like, his hands are too wet, his mouth is too wet. Everything, him touching the coal, like, makes it wet and cold and stuff like that. And so, like, yeah, it makes sense he's gonna struggle to create a fire. I do really like her being like, you're trying to make us a fire to sit beside, and he's like failing, more like I do like the tracing of fingers on the underside of the ice. That's a great image. I do like that he kind of like is giving up there and is like, yeah, well, you wanna enjoy the human world, but I guess there's some aspects we just can't. But and we'll talk about this in a second, but she seems to kind of be going like, really? Like, you giving up just like that? Like, not cool, man. And I do like that. I'm not sure I totally understand what's going on here. So like, is that the way of it? You try once and then give up. And I think she's referring to like, you try once to show me the winters of the human world, and then you're like, well, we can't partake in these parts, the human parts of winter. And she's like, well, this was one try. Like, we can try again. And he misunderstands and is like, well, I tried multiple times to get the fire burning. And I'm not sure what she's referring to here, because, like, I don't really understand the difference, because, like, yes, he did try the same thing multiple times. He did try to get the fire burning multiple times. And she's not really clarifying if she does mean, like, you tried all of this, once, because this, they've only tried once. I also don't know if she's kind of referring to the whole, like, insanity quote of, like, if you try the same thing, like, over and over again and trying to get multiple results. I'm butchering it. But, if you do the same thing over and over expecting different results, that's like the definition of insanity. And so I don't know if she's kind of referring to that idea of like, you tried to light the fire in the same way multiple times. You could try different ways. But I'm not exactly sure the meaning there. And then they are kind of sounding like an old married couple of like, yeah, like, we can make it happen next year if I put my mind to it. Well, will you? Put your mind to it, hubby. I think that's great. I do really like the skating thing. Like, if you have the desire and the money, you should absolutely go commission someone to make art of them skating underneath the ice with the castle behind them. Like, fantastic, absolutely amazing, gorgeous image. Love that. And I do, despite like my critiques of it, I do like that they do end up skating at the end. I do think the idea is very cute. I'm not sure what's going on with like the board. I think there's something. Where does it say that? Oh yeah, I don't really know what's going on with like the wood and stuff like that, but like overall the image is beautiful and cute, and I like just trying that simple idea that she brought up from the beginning. Like, that was the best part. That was the best part of the evening. It's not perfect, but it worked. They had a good time, kind of thing. Oh yeah, nitpicky thing, but as the lake bottom became the sky while the icy surface became down. It feels a little weird to go sky and down rather than go as the lake bottom became up while the icy surface became down, or as the lake bottom became the sky while the icy surface became the ground. I think those would work better, but I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. I don't know, but it feels like a very beautiful image of like, oh yes, this becomes the sky, and then it kind of drops off on a very simple image that doesn't quite compare, right? If that makes sense. But I do like the idea. I do like the image of everything being relative under the waves, and that like once you're turned around, now there's a castle in the sky. Like a castle being underwater is also already a great image, and then a castle in the sky is also a great image. An upside down castle in the sky. Now I'm thinking of Castlevania, and that's pretty cool. I'm thinking of Symphony of the Night. But yeah, so I love the image in that way. So now we return to the mistletoe. Remember what I said about Aefron pointing out, defining what mistletoe is, because she doesn't presumably know what it is. So it's super cute that she somehow, somewhere got a sprig of mistletoe. And produced that at the end. That she kind of had a little surprise gift for him, that everything was going wrong, but one thing went right. I do really like that. But I have an issue with it because she doesn't know what mistletoe is. If he just said, oh yeah, kissing under the mistletoe, like, eating by the fire, drinking by the fire, then I'd be like, oh, okay, like, I can believe that she knows what mistletoe is because he didn't have to define it. He just was like, yeah, kissing under the mistletoe. But because he specifically went out of his way to be like, a plant that grows on trees, yeah, she could have grabbed moss, like, she doesn't know what it is until he tells it to her. And so I think that could be quite simply fixed just by him not defining it. I am curious where she got it, because, like, we actually have mistletoe in the trees here, and it tends to be pretty high up. I think it often comes from, like, birds, like, pooping in the trees or something, and it grows there. I don't know for sure. But I do believe that, like, I think it can grow anywhere, so I do believe that you could find one that's close to the water. You could find one that's down below, because I think it can just kind of grow anywhere. But I'm curious where she got that for sure. And I do like that it ends with the sweet moment of them making the best of it, that there is a transcendence to this story in the sense that, like, a lot of the things that we might want to do may not go according to plan, but sometimes, like, making the best of what you have and, working with an idea you might have brushed off at first can often be worth doing and beautiful and the best part of your night. It's kind of this idea of, like, kids being reined in and they're all mad that they can't go outside, but they actually have, like, an amazing time inside, and it's like one of their favorite memories from this vacation or whatever. Like, it's that kind of idea. I really like that. But let's go up to go through all the comments. Well, they'd have to find the sleigh, reach it, get everything harnessed up, and then ride all without getting caught. That is very fair. And I honestly was not thinking about the horse. I was just kind of thinking of slide. I was just kind of thinking of them sliding around in the sleigh. But that's a very good point. If you're looking for a horse, I now understand the difficulty of the sleigh. And that is a good point of, like, there's a lot to do without getting caught. This also reminds me of another question I had. Why couldn't they find sleds? Because presumably, like, especially in a wintry place, like, maybe a house would have little sleds or toboggans or whatever, like, leaned against the side of the house. How come they couldn't get those and then slide around the ice on those? Again, barring the suffocation issue, how come they couldn't you know, lay on the sleds and then slip and slide around in the snow and the ice. I actually feel like that would be, well, I don't know. I was going to say that would be a better approximation of them skating, but I guess it depends on if you prefer, like, the motion, the slidey motion on top of the ice, or, like, the uprightness of it, in which case their upside down version is a better approximation. It says, can confirm that it's Yuletide, not Yuletime, unless it's a different in-universe thing. Very fair. I mean, I'm open to there being a sequel, and if the word list is the same. What, you mean for Christmas? I probably would do a different word list. I mean, we'll see how things go, but I definitely would be curious to see a sequel to this. Oh, I know it's Califrac. I was just wondering aloud, I guess, because if mermaids aren't believed to be real, but then they are, does that make it fantasy? Or, yeah, urban fantasy then. That says, well, my idea is that everything else he tried failed, so he's now scrambling to find something else. I'm curious where you said that, what that was in response to. Oh, it sounds like it was in the section with the like, idea, terrible idea. Okay, let's do your idea part. Like, that does make sense, and like I said, this is part of my, like, like, I don't quite know where the disjointedness comes from, because, like, it makes sense, right? That you can go, I don't like that idea. Wait a second, maybe I do. You know, it's not unrealistic, but there is something a little odd about it. Yeah, I think it's just the fact, I guess it's more of the fact that there's so many other ideas to explore. Like, he's already dismissed that idea, and so it feels a little bit weird that he's like, no, that sucks. And then he's like, I have these other ideas to do. And also, we'll do your sucky idea, you know? I guess that is part of it. That is part of what would make it make more sense to me if he's like, no, I have all these ideas. We don't have to do your sucky idea. We'll do my ideas. And then at the end, she's like, can we please do my idea that you said sucks? And then he's like, okay. And then they do it and it doesn't suck. And then they do it and it's actually the best idea of the day, you know? Actually, exploring the castle would be super cool for seeing human stuff. I didn't even think of that. That's a great point. That could be, you know, like in Little Mermaid when she's exploring the ship and stuff. But yeah, that would be pretty awesome if there was a sign for the pie baking contest. You would kind of have to say that, but that would be great if it's like, ooh, there's a pie bake sale or baking contest. Well, we can grab a pie from there. Inadvertently start a feud that endures for hundreds of years. I was thinking of bringing that up, the idea of, okay, you steal a pie, and then you're like, it's Brenda. Brenda, my neighbor, she's a dang pie stealer. And then you create a feud between the neighbors that lasts forever. The medieval monsters are due on Maple Street with pies instead of electricity. I don't know about this. It sounds interesting. That says, the weird thing is, it's probably the opposite here. Sugar was incredibly expensive in pre-modern times, while you can get clay anywhere. Oh, yeah, that's a great point. I did not think about that. Fair explanation for why stealing a mug would be less grievous than stealing a pie. Sugar cane only grew in the Caribbean. Oh, wow. That's even rarer than I thought. Economics have changed a lot. People used to rent pineapples to display when they couldn't afford to eat them, for example. Yeah, totally. It depends on the sentimental value of the mug and the availability of ingredients. Yeah, I suppose that could be true today as well. I very much agree. I only have mugs I really like because it's Mars, so I probably would be more annoyed at the mug. Man, everyone is hanging by the windows on this cold, snowy winter's day. How strange. Yeah, that's a good point with both the pie and the crust. Um, go steal the pie. Okay. How about I steal a half-eaten pie crust? Go steal the pie. It said there's almost nothing left in the mug. Oh, gotcha. So, like, there's a little bit. It's like, maybe we can have a taste, but, like, I need to put more in there. Gotcha. I mean, not spilling it is impressive, but I think a lot of fish worth catching way more than a mug. That's fair. Some fish can survive a decent length of time outside of water. Gotcha. So, like, I don't know a lot about fish, but are there some fish who will calmly, like when they're out of water, they'll just be like, yes, this is fine, rather than, flop around. Ghoulish. Had to look it up. Most fish do not have lungs, so it might be a swim bladder, but that organ is used to control a fish's buoyancy. Gotcha. Oh, you know of a city that's underwater, says Orphan. Are you talking about Atlantis? Oh, well, no, you did say a real one. Archaeologists are still working on. It does. It says, some castles are quite small, just a tower in some cases. I think if that's what you were going for, that would work better, but I think, at least for my understanding, I would need it to be described as a tower rather than a castle, because castle makes me think like in Little Mermaid, right? How they have a castle under the water, but, a human castle instead of a mermaid castle. But yeah, if it's just like a tower, then that makes a lot more sense as to why that's not the main focal point and stuff. I was attempting to emphasize his lack of planning overall. I'm trying to figure out how to respond to that, because, like, I totally got that. Like, that came through, but I feel like, I guess the question would be, why were you specifically wanting him not to have planned it? Because, like I said, I think that the lack of planning adds to the disjointedness of the story overall. And, like, granted, I don't mean in the sense, like, it's supposed to be disjointed in the sense that he didn't plan things, so things are going to be a little bit clunky. Like, that's not the problem. It's more of, like, I don't know how to describe it, but, like, outside the story, looking at the structure of the story itself. And so having him planned it and that those plans gone awry, I think would take away or really help with the disjointedness back here kind of thing. But it sounds like you're rather attached to the idea of him not planning things, so I'm curious why you're attached to that idea. Do not feed the mermaids. Raccoons are native to North America. Oh, okay. Interesting. They are exclusively New World. Learned a new thing today. Like the cane toad in Australia, they are, alas, not exclusively New World anymore. Gotcha. Is the cane toad a horrifying creature? I did learn something new about them. Raccoons are apparently cousins to bears. Wild. Oren says, yes, there's Mount Everest a few days away from where I live, but yes, I haven't seen snow. Whoa, wild. Wait, so what? I'm totally blanking. I'm blanking on what country Everest is in. It's not India, and so I wanted to ask, like, wait, are you actually from that area? And I didn't have a tag for it, but now I can't remember what it is. Full floppy fish. Next prompt. Tibet. Gotcha. That's not sounding right, though. I feel like it starts with like a P or an N or something. Julia, no. Mermondo. No. It's Gravity Falls. You gotta go with the dumber name. It's Mermondo. That is correct, FYI. I intended him to crawl along the creek bed so he's not entirely out of the water while he's gathering wood. Gotcha. Okay, I think just removing the inside the woods would make me go, okay, because you did describe him along the creek bed. I was going to say Tibet as well, says Massa. I propose a headcanon and them bouncing around like seals. Yes, that would be so cute. This says, yeah, this one's rougher than usual. That's fair. That's okay. We all have our rough stories. Oh no, phone might die before Rico gets home. I mean, humans can survive a minute underwater, but they're just holding their breath in some way. Yeah, I guess that's part of it, is that, like... I don't know if a creature with gills can hold their breath, but if he could, that would work very well for me. But again, there's the issue of they're talking. They're talking outside the water and gasping and stuff like that. Even the lunged fish flop around. Oh, wild. They flop around and look like they're screaming at each other. We'll send a picture of that. Well, when you read the tale of Aefron and Sallacia's first meeting, you'll see that he's not one for planning. Nepal! Yes! That's what I was looking for. It did start with an N. Yes, okay. Is Nepal actually where you're from? But I didn't have a Nepal flag for you. Yeah, so I do know that Aefron is not one for planning, for sure. That is something I know about his character. I guess that makes sense, that you're like, well, it would totally go against his character if he had, you know, waited and planned this out and stuff like that. I'm trying to think. But I guess it also comes down to, like, maybe it would help if, like, from the beginning, he's kind of into it. Like, he's not planning, but he's like, okay, we have this plan. We're going to a winter place. You're going to see human winter stuff. We will figure it out when we get there, but I will show you things, you know? That I think maybe that would work better, but I guess it's partially the fact that they get there. They're here to see winter. And Sallascia's like, yay, snow! And he's like, can we turn around, please? You know, it's like, you just got here. You might have swam thousands of miles to get here. And now you want to turn around? You know? I don't know. The king toad is a notorious example of invasive species taking over another environment. They were brought to Australia during the outbreak of cane beetles and then spread across the continent like a plague. Oh, interesting. Nepal, but I live on the other side of the border. Tibet is where the plateaus are. Ah, interesting. I see the mud skipper screaming. I see the thumbnail. It's a border range, so it could be in different countries. Ghoulish. It's on the Nepal-China border where the Tibetans used to be. Orphan. No, Ghoulish. Everest is exclusively in Nepal. Good to know. Alrighty, Rue. Well, like I said, I hope that I didn't critique you too heavily. Like I said, like, I really like Aefron and Sallascia and their stories. I think that what you're going for here is fantastic. I love their relationship. I love the image at the end and stuff like that. There are some things in the execution that definitely made me scratch my head. But I don't want you to leave thinking I didn't like the story or anything like that. I very much enjoyed, and I walked away the first time going like, oh, like, that was so cute. I've seen some people call Nepal napalm. Oh no. That's not good. Aw, and that's the mudkips on in Pokemon. Is that what they're called? Mudkips? Apparently I never opened the comments. Or I just closed them. I don't know.